So here I'm just going to get the length. You know, it's better when you get your pattern, you can have a little bit more, and you should have, because you're going to have some material that you're going to want to have under that's going to stitch down. So like when I cut these panels, the panel is going to be like this long. I'm not going to cut it to where I think it's going to be here, because inside of here, you know, you have to be able to sew the pieces together, and you're going to need a little extra wool, or you're going to have to provide a little extra wool from the bottom. So here I have it lined up with what's going on underneath it. I'm going to get a basic pattern. I'm going to cut out my wool. I'm going to lay them together, and then we're going to start, you know, piecing this together with this. And I haven't decided what's going to happen here yet, how I'm going to, this is going to be open. I am going to do the classic Anorak cowl on this. Although this one's kind of in the hood, and my other ones I kind of do it with the hood. But, you know, I have some buttons. I'll probably use buttons here like I did. Buttons are cool. I don't necessarily want to use zippers. I want it to look more rustic. So the only other thing I could possibly do would be one of those leather strap with a wooden toggle. Those are kind of cool, but I'll see what my son wants me to do on that. So here is the pattern of the hood. So one of the things you're going to want to have is chalk, and you're going to want to have white and another darker color, so the chalk shows up on whatever it is that you're marking, right? So you have just the, you know, however more steep you go here, it's going to give you more of a baseball cap style. And then you have to decide if you're going to use some kind of a cinch in the back to tighten the hood down, or you're going to put a lace in here to tie the hood so the hood can close. You can do a combo where you have this and you have a separate liner with a cinch that closes if you want to be more elaborate and you want to handle colder temperatures. Mine's going to be simple. The hood is going to just be on when it's on. I'm probably not going to do any kind of a cinch down. I've probably never used them. It's more about what happens at your collar and your neck, keeping your neck and face warm. And usually, you know, you have a hood, you can always wear a hat under it. You know, let's not be a little crazy about it. But, you know, you only need to do one panel, because this is going to be mirror image on the other side. So you're going to cut two pieces the same size, and then we're going to get the center strip that's going to match these two, right? So that's the next part of it. Okay, so here's the template for the center of the hood. It's pretty long, right? I mean, it's because it's going to go from the neck over the top of the head. Better to be too long than too short. And the nice thing about doing a pattern is you can maintain some of your design cues that you want it to build into your garment. So here, you know, I have a little curvature around the bill, sort of imitating, you know, not the same kind of curve as a baseball hat, but a little bit of a curvature there. And so having this template is going to help me remember that when I start cutting into the wool, which will happen pretty soon. So I have my two patterns here. I have the pattern for the hood proper, right? And then I have this part that, you know, sort of comes in between the two pieces. So we're going to get these cut out, and then tomorrow we'll be sewing the hood. You know, it does help to have a straight edge when you're marking your materials, so you get nice straight cuts. So if you mark straight lines, you'll have nice straight cuts. This, again, is going to be about 6 inches wide, so it gives you that little bit of, you know, fold over for stitching on either side, and it's going to be about 27 inches long. So from the base of the neck over the top of the hood is about 27 inches with the side panels, and that's what's going to make the hood. So, you know, you have your centerpiece, and if you're doing it and you're in remnants because you're getting down to the wire and you don't have, you know, you didn't economize well when you're making your cuts, this is one of those places where, like, they throw panels together to economize on some of the material. But again, if you wanted to do a little wider spot, then you're going to want to accommodate for that in your cut, so that at the top, if the bill of your hood is a little wider, you're going to want to have that one section. You know, if I decide that's the top, this is going to be like 7 inches, so I can throw a little more, a little wider bill on there. So I found one of the things to keep in mind, so you have a symmetrical garment, is if you're going to do a panel like this, that you can fold it in half and you cut them together so you have a nice symmetrical piece. So when you put it on, you won't really notice it. If you kind of mess something up and you're wearing it, stuff wrinkles and bunches and you don't see it, but you'll see it. So it's easy if you fold it in half, give yourself a mirror image so you cut it, and when you cut it, you'll have a nice symmetrical piece. So here I just laid out the center stripe for the hood. You can see it's a lot of material. Fortunately, this is a big blanket, and the other two pieces, which are actually going to use a pretty decent amount of material. You think about your sleeves. Your sleeve will probably be anywhere from like 27, 24 inches long, depending on the design of the sleeve. And then depending on the size of the person, it could be 18 or 19 inches at the top, down to somewhere around 10, 9, 8, 10 at the bottom. So that's quite a lot of material. It's almost 36 inches wide, at least at one point. Or you have to do two separate ones where you have at least 18 inches wide of material at one end, right? 18 down to like 9 at the other. It's a pretty big taper when you think about somebody who's got a big upper arm and shoulder. But there's a droop, on over the top of the shoulder, and there's a drop underneath the armpit, so you're going to get some width there. So you want to make sure you're using enough material and that you're conserving the material, so at least you have the length of the run that you need of consistent materials. Otherwise, you're going to have to start patching cement. So if you start with enough material, that's great. If you're going to do two, and you have two blankets of larger size, then it is easier to economize, and have enough material. Like this was probably a queen size blanket, so it's big enough. I found the full, which was the next one, which is the same wool as the Anorak I already showed you. That's a smaller blanket than this one. This is a nice size blanket, easy. I'm going to have material left over so I can be creative with it. But the other one I am going to have to economize, which is great to do this one first because I'm going to have all the panels to lay out on that in one big sheet and cut them all out at the same time. So that's what the other one's going to be. I'm going to use all the panels from this one as the pattern for the next one. And I'm going to have, I'll have that stuff cut out as well so I can save it and I can use them as an ongoing pattern as I start to make more of these. But I want to make something else in between, and that's fine. I'll conserve the pieces and I'll have a nice pattern to use for the next one that I do. So here I have my final cut piece. So this is going to be an inner hand warming pocket. It's going to go against the body, right? And then this is going to be the outer pocket. So this one is going to go all the way to the bottom. So you have all of this room. So inside of this, I'm going to put either on, the other side of this or on this itself, some other little internal pouches that you can use to kind of organize this much larger kangaroo pocket. So you can do put it into threes, have three separate pouches there. So, you can organize stuff in there. You could four, whatever you want. You could have something with a closure, like a zipper. I actually took an old zipper pouch and installed it inside of the other kangaroo pouch of the first one I made. I attached a quick loop for a carabiner. So if you want to, carabiner your keys or something into your jacket, so that if you fall or whatever, your keys or whatever it is you want don't pop out. By having these pretty deep, you're not likely to have anything fall out. But if you have internal pouches and some way to close them, either Velcro or something else, it's a great way to secure anything that you might put in there. And I'll show you when I get to that point. I have lots of material left, which is fantastic. I have all the major pieces cut out. It's the winter time, so if I'm sniffling, what are you gonna do? All the major pieces of the garment are here. They will be ready to turn into a hooded sweatshirt tomorrow. So what I'm gonna do to start is I have these little clips here. I apologize, maybe I have one out in the open that I don't have to open this. So I have these tiny little clips that you can use to hold the garments together for sewing. I find that needles are a little easier because they don't get hung up on the machine. Like if you had a lot of room between this and the needle, it might be fine, but for closer, I mean the sewing needle on the machine, these are great for holding the garment together, and I'm going to organize the garment using these before I start sewing it together. So that's the plan. We're getting pretty close to actually sewing things together and bringing all of this wool and turning to a wool pullover. Now this is all in the same evening. I've just been stopping and starting because I don't have anybody to hold the phone camera for me to do this, so I don't want to bore you with me just cutting straight lines and laying chalk lines and stuff. But we're almost there. We're getting ready. I did think of something else that I need to do probably. I am going to cut, if I do the cowl part of the hood, there's another interior piece of wool that I may have to cut and install, but I'll do that once I get the hood assembled. So here, take a look at how much fabric could potentially be used by the sleeves for somebody who's really big. So my son is a power lifter and he's about 280 pounds right now. And so, I mean, at his upper arm, I mean, this is 20 inches. That's not really ridiculous. When I was powerlifting when I was younger, I was like 18 inches across the center of my arm, flexing, of course. And then you're down to about 10 inches on the other side. So this is like 20 by 10. That's a lot of material. And it's better to have too much than too little. Of course, there's a lot of taper in a sleeve, as you get to the elbow and what have you. But when you're talking about a tube that's 20 inches at the shoulder, that's still a lot of fabric. Like this is going to be folded over into a sleeve that's going to look roughly like that, right? So once you fold it over, it doesn't really look like that much material. But when you're laying out your blanket, it's actually quite a lot of material. So keep that in mind. Don't get to the point where you haven't given yourself enough length to create these pieces that you want. Things that are going to be buried, like for me, the internal pouch inside of the larger pouch, like the hand pocket, is not going to be seen. So if it was seamed and it was remnants of things put together, that's no big deal. So think about that. If you are using a smaller blanket and you end up having to economize, where are you going to do that? Like this one, I actually, because I tacoed it, I started the sleeve lower, and I measured this from like here to here. That's like 20 inches. That's a lot of material. I'm 190 pounds. I'm not 290 pounds, right? So, but think about it when you're laying it out. That's why it's good to have your pattern and get your primary pieces cut and measured and put in there, so that anything else that you don't want to have in one continuous piece, that you've already laid them out on your larger piece before you cut, like the body and certain things you could hide. Like I could have hidden the seam inside, or I could have done half of the vest. Like I could have done the vest from here because I have that top cowl piece coming around. It really depends on what you want to accomplish and how much material you start with. So in this case, I started with plenty of material. I'm not going to have any problems making my garment, but keep that in mind. Start with a little extra material. I don't think this blanket costs $5 more than the smaller one.